Good day, Internet. We are Chavez and Valko, the key to your immigration solutions. I am Senior Associate Benjamin Hamilton. And as always, when you see me, we're here to talk about all things employment based immigration. Today, we are going to talk a little bit more about the TN visa. It is one of the, I guess, most popular videos we have. We have a deep dive if you're looking for that in both English and Spanish in terms of the requirements. It is one of the sort of most viewed things and one of the things we get the most questions about. So we decided today we're going to gather up some of those questions from YouTube, Facebook, Reddit, and try to go over maybe some of these more sort of nuanced issues or issues that we see coming up a lot in regards to TN. So very quick background on what is the TN, right? The TN is a professional visa for citizens of Mexico or Canada. So it only applies to these two countries. It's similar to the H-1B in that it is a professional visa, but one of the main differences is that the H-1B obviously is open to any nationality. It's also open to any position that you can prove requires a specific degree. But TN, on the other hand, is limited to a specific list of about 63 professions, and the list also includes what are the sort of minimum requirements for that profession. So the TN is maybe a little bit more, I guess the word would be specific than the H-1B. So jump right into what are some of the common questions. And I would say one of the most common ones I see, especially if you go to somewhere like Reddit, is you're going to see questions regarding, well, do I qualify? You say, well, why is that such a common question? Well, obviously, when you look at something like accountant, it says the requirements are a bachelor's or licenciatura degree, licenciatura obviously from Mexico, or a CPA, CA, CGA, or CMA. So it's relatively specific, right? So if you have a degree in accounting, you can probably qualify as a TN accountant, right? So where do these do I qualify questions come up? Well, one of the most common things we see is involving the computer systems analyst. Why? Well, for two reasons, right? The computer systems analyst has an alternative set of requirements. So it says a bachelor's or licenciatura or a post-secondary diploma or post-secondary certificate and 3 years of experience. So it's kind of like bachelor's or associates plus 3 years of experience. And it seems like there's a lot of people that go and get a degree in something unrelated and then change their mind and decide they want to enter into the IT field, right? So they have a degree that's kind of a mismatch to the field, right? So one of the questions we have here from Reddit is, hey, I'm a Workday analyst, and I was wondering if I could possibly apply for the TN visa as a computer systems analyst. Also, another one kind of in the same vein, I'm a digital marketing specialist for a U.S. company. Do you think it's possible to get a TN visa under computer systems analyst? I have a Bachelor of Commerce degree with a major in marketing and a minor in international business. Is there a chance if I prepare accordingly? Please let me know. So the first thing you have to realize is that even though, it says a bachelor's or associate's plus 3 years of experience, people think, well, I have the bachelor's and I have some experience in IT. Is it going to work? Well, the degree always has to be related to the profession. So that's one of the biggest problems, right? Someone's like, well, I have a degree in English and 3 years of experience in IT. Can I be a computer systems analyst? In general, the answer is going to be probably no, right? Now, at the end of the day, you're always at the discretion of the adjudicating officer. If you're Canadian, you're usually applying through CBP at the port of entry. If you're Mexican, you're applying usually at the embassy or consulate. And obviously, at the end of the day, that individual officer is the one that's going to make the judgment call. So they're the one you have to be able to convince. And you have to understand that they're trained to, try to see if there is a correlation, right? Or if between the degree and the position, is it related or not? The other thing they're also looking at too is they're looking at the job description. They want to make sure the job being offered is a computer systems analyst, right? So for that, the number one place you have to look is the Occupational Outlook Handbook. It's from the Department of Labor. If you Google it, it pops right up. It's there on the internet to access. There is an entry in the Occupational Outlook Handbook for computer systems analysts, right? There's a how to become one. There's also what they do. So under how to become one, it says computer systems analysts typically need a bachelor's degree in computer and information technology or a related field such as mathematics, right? So here they're giving you kind of an idea of the fields that could potentially qualify. Again, if you're coming and saying, well, I got an English degree and then experience in IT, probably not going to work, right? But here we're seeing computer information technology. So anything IT related, computer science related, software, right? And then also mathematics, kind of an odd one to throw in there maybe. Taking business courses or majoring in management information systems may be helpful. Some employers hire job candidates who have liberal arts degrees and gained programming or technical expertise elsewhere. So that's your line. That's kind of your saving grace to say, on first glance, my degree doesn't maybe appear related, right? But the authoritative source here is the OOH, and the OOH opens the door, right, for people with maybe not so non-related degrees that have gained programming or technical expertise elsewhere, right? Because remember, computer systems analyst allows for an associate's plus 3 years of experience, or not necessarily an associate's, maybe a bachelor's, kind of an unrelated field, and 3 years of experience. Now, the problem is going to be, is the officer really aware of this, right? That's why one of the things sometimes we do is we'll print out the section of the OOH for CSAs, highlight that section, so that when you're sitting in front of the officer, you've made sure that the job description really does align with CSA, and then B, if they're looking at it being like, you got a degree in English and 3 years of experience in IT, I don't see how the English degree relates. You say, look right here in the OOH, it says liberal arts degree and programming experience, right? Well, this is a liberal arts degree. I also have the 3 years of experience, right? Again, just because it does say this doesn't mean the officer is going to buy it. But it does give you that sort of job open. The other thing people always ask about is, well, does my position qualify for a CSA? Does my position qualify? Like you saw someone asking about Workday, right? Again, you go to the OOH, you look at what they do, because job descriptions are not in the TN regulations, right? Just the requirements, not the descriptions. So you say computer systems analyst, so go to OOH, what do? A computer systems analyst, sometimes called system architects, study an organization's current computer systems and procedures and design improvements to them. In doing so, these analysts help the organization operate more efficiently. And then there's a bunch of listed out job duties, right? As long as your job description predominantly aligns with this, it doesn't have to be a one-to-one, right? But in general, it has to be 51%, meaning 51% of my duties have to relate to what is expected of the computer systems analyst, right? Because what they're looking for is they're looking for jobs that look like web developers or software developers, and they go, this isn't a computer systems analyst. So maybe you do have the degree and experience, but the actual position you're being offered doesn't line up with CSA. We see the same thing with like economists, right? There's actually some memos about that released by USCIS, specifically telling officers that they need to, double check and ensure that the position offered does align with economists. Because you saw way too many people that have degrees in economics, but the position they were applying for clearly did not align with what was expected of an economist. It was like market research analyst or something like that, right? So just because you have the degree doesn't mean you're automatically in if the job description doesn't match with what they're expecting, right? So, hey, again, do I qualify as a CSA? Well, look at your experience, look at your degree, right? Look at the job description, and then compare that to the OOH, right? And does it at least sort of 51% satisfy everything we see in the OOH, right? And then be prepared to argue it. Again, some of these officers, they seem to want to deny people, and it becomes, sometimes difficult to kind of get past their biases and try to show them this information. Another key thing to look at too is also transcripts, right? Because, maybe your degrees in business management right? But you had a minor or a focus in something else. We see focuses like in finance or something like that, right? Obviously you can highlight points of your transcript to say, well, look, I got a degree in mechanical engineering, 4-year degree, but hey, look at there are a bunch of classes in here related to computer systems analyst that would amount to essentially an associate's degree, right? So you can highlight and say, look, I have 3 years of experience. I'm not trying to qualify as having a 4-year degree. I'm trying to qualify as having sort of the 2-year degree and 3 years of experience. Look at my transcript for my 4-year degree. You'll see there's about 2 years worth of classes related to computer systems analyst, right? So you really have to kind of look at the whole case and really figure out what's my line of attack. Make sure you have it all ready to go, print it out, highlight it, and you're ready to kind of point stuff out to them. Another one we see a lot is software engineering. Because engineer is a TM profession, but it just says that engineer, right? It's not limited to any specific field, right? So you're looking at mechanical, civil, chemical, right? You go down the list. So one that pops up is software engineering. I have a degree in software engineering. Like, do I apply as a CSA or do I apply as an engineer? Well, first thing, a lot of that, I think a software engineering degree could work for both a CSA and a software engineer. It largely comes down to the job description in terms of which one I'm going to go with. Interesting enough, if you go to the OOH, there's not actually a entry for software engineers. If you look it up, what you kind of end up with is software developers, right? So obviously, if the job description, you have a degree in software engineering and the position aligns with software developer, apply as a software engineer, right? Don't try to apply as a CSA because actually you're running a risk of them saying that the job description doesn't qualify, not your degree, but your job experience doesn't qualify. Like I said, software engineer is a little bit weird, right? You have to come prepared and ready to argue because it's not an actual, and there's not an actual one-to-one entry for it in the OOH. Like I said, but like if I go to software developer, and I look up how to become one in the OOH, what does it say? It says software developers, quality assurance analyst, so it includes QA. Typically need a bachelor's degree in computer information technology. That makes sense. Or related fields such as engineering or mathematics. Obviously, engineering, right? Again, you have a degree in software engineering, you're applying as a software engineer. Your job description is probably going to align more with a software developer. You print out the OOH, you highlight the part that says engineering, and that engineering kind of opens up the door to maybe like I have a degree in mechanical engineering, and there's some classes related, right? Because it doesn't really limit it to a specific field. But again, at the end of the day, you're always at the mercy of the individual officer that's adjudicating the case. They can always kind of go whichever way they want. Because I know we had a question here from Reddit that asked about, can I obtain a TN visa in software engineering with a bachelor's in civil engineering? It does say or related fields such as engineering, and that's a broad statement. I would be interested to know if there are at least courses you took as part of your civil engineering degree that overlap and relate to software engineering. But there is an argument to be made. But again, it's not like the strongest case. But there is kind of enough there to make it sort of worth the effort to try and make the case. And again, I would come with this printed out, highlighted engineering, and saying, look, the OOH says engineering is a related field, right? It doesn't specify which field of engineering. So why can't I qualify? Sort of moving on to kind of our next sort of group of questions involves actually denials, right? And I have two questions here from Reddit. They're basically the same question. It says, denied for TN visa. Can I still enter the U.S. as a tourist? Then the second one that popped up, TN visa denial. Consequences of re-entering U.S. as a visitor. The idea is, I was denied. I need to enter. Maybe it was because it was a renewal, right? So I was actually living in the U.S. I need to re-enter because I have an apartment, a car, and stuff I need to deal with, or maybe I just want to visit or whatnot. The answer to this is a big maybe. It depends, right? Obviously, if you had a denial, especially if you're Canadian, because the denial when you're entering with CBP, and the denial is with CBP, so they're very aware of it, right? Mexicans, it may be the denial was with the Department of State. Now you're going through CBP. They may not be 100%. They may not even know it happened necessarily. But it's really all about that interaction with the individual officer. Obviously, they're going to immediately assume that you're probably got denied and you're going to try to come into work, right? You have a higher risk of being placed in secondary and interrogated. And again, when you're interrogated, they can search your phone, your laptop, look for emails, this, that, and the other thing, search your bags to see if there's anything that tips them off as to your actual intent. But if you can convince them that you are entering as a tourist, then hypothetically you can, right? It's just you're more likely to be questioned and hassled and placed in the secondary if you just had a visa denied. But can you? Yeah. I mean, what can you do to mitigate it? Have a round trip ticket, have a very specific itinerary, right? And very specific, this is what I'm doing for how long, right? You have to have details, be specific, so that they believe that you're entering as a tourist. So there's no like blanket prohibition. Oh, your visa got denied. Now you can't enter as a tourist. Because again, if you're like Mexican and you have a tourist visa and a TN visa gets denied, your tourist visa is not impacted, right? It's not canceled or removed. So you can still reapply. So it's really going to come down to that specific interaction with that officer in terms of how you present yourself, how you present your case, whether or not they believe you that you're entering as a tourist and not for work purposes. Another common question we kind of see pop up is in regards to, and this is more on the Canadian side, right? Because since they apply at a port of entry, they can kind of apply whenever. For Mexicans, this question doesn't come up as often because right now they're backlogged pretty bad. But anyway, the question tends to be in terms of when do I apply in regards to my start date, right? So one question was, can I apply for TN visa on the day of my start date? Another question was regarding, my TN support letter doesn't have a start date. Is that going to be an issue? So the general rule is that you can enter the United States 10 days before your start date. So again, looking at you, my Canadian friends, this is what really applies to you. Does the letter need to have a start date? Yes, right? Because they're not gonna want to give you a sort of blanket of approval and not knowing when exactly this is supposed to start. And then again, when can I apply? 10 days in advance of your start date. I see people that say, well, my start date is October 1st. Can I like apply entry early to come in and like find a house and set up? And no, right? I mean, if you're applying 30 days, 14 before the start date listed on the support letter, they may deny you. They may just say, no, come back later, right? Now, you can just ask to be entered as a tourist, right? And say, I'm entering as a tourist, explain the situation that, and then hope they let you in. And then you go back out 10 days before and then apply for the TN status. And it's fine. Like we see people a lot of time that are like, hey, I don't want to apply at the airport. I want to apply at the land border. Can I go in, apply, then immediately turn around and then fly back? Well, yeah, as long as, again, the start date's within 10 days, we see that all the time where people will apply at the land border, and then turn around, go back and then actually get their stuff because they didn't want to come down with their stuff if they had a risk of being denied, or maybe they applied at the land border, go around and then go back to the airport, fly out of Toronto. Again, as long as that application is being done within 10 days of the start date, it's fine to do that, right? Apply, turn around, come out. One I didn't really put here, but I guess this again applies for my Canadian friends here. Sorry, I just lost my train of thought. Well, I'll come back to that. We do have an audience question here because we're going to move into some questions that we've gotten from YouTube that are a little bit more specific, a little bit quicker to answer. But anyway, got an audience question here. It says, is there a way to open a business LLC without affecting my TN visa status? Absolutely. There's no prohibition on owning a business, right? And you're allowed to take steps to set up a business. What you cannot do is actively manage a business, manage the day-to-day of the business, right? Obviously, you would need a corresponding visa, which could be like an E2 for investors, E1 for trade. We do a lot of those, are very common. We have a whole video series on the E1s and E2s. We also have a whole video series on, we did a recent video, not a series, but it's a recent video on kind of like side hustles and what can I do in my current status? What can I can't? Well, what's going to get me in trouble? What's not going to get me in trouble? But in general, no prohibition on owning a business, no prohibition on being a passive owner in an active business. Again, key word is passive. There's no prohibition on receiving profits and dividends if you're a passive owner in a business. Again, there is this sort of cutoff line between, hey, I'm setting something up to when it becomes operational, and I then have to step back, right? And either not open it until I get, or not, go operational until I get a visa, or maybe I have someone that can handle the operations for me before until I'm able to get a corresponding visa. Now, remember, the TN does not allow self-employment. So obviously you can't take a TN and then transition it to a company in which you are an owner. If you read the regs, it is allowed technically if you're like a minority shareholder. It's one of those things that, again, you kind of have to argue with officers. It's a bigger issue. CBP, they're really keyed in on it, and they kind of really come down on it. In Mexico, not as much. They seem to be a little bit chiller. We've had plenty of clients that like indirectly own the business. It's directly owned by the foreign company, the Mexican company, and they indirectly own it, and seems to have been fine. But let me scroll down here to some of our questions that we've gotten from, various sources here. So one here says, I have a visa for a year, but when I entered, they gave me the sejo, the stamp for 3 years. So basically they want to know, well, what's going on here? Well, that's normal, right? Because you got to remember, the visa, if you're Mexican, the visa length is based on reciprocity. The status is actually set in law. So the maximum status you can receive on a TN, Canadian or Mexican, is 3 years, right? That's the maximum. The visa length is based on reciprocity. So it varies from country to country. For Mexico, for the longest time, it was just 1 year on the visa. But that was changed actually back in June to allow for 4 years, right? So you can get 1 or 4 years. You do have to pay a fee. I think the fee for 4 years is $382. So basically, if they approve your visa, they say, well, you want 1 or 4? You say 4. They say, okay, go down to that window, pay, and come back. So you make the payment there in the consulate or embassy, and they can now stamp it for 4 years. So now you'll get a 4-year visa and enter, but only get 3 years of status. There's always this kind of weird mismatch between your visa and your status. But look, your visa doesn't control how long you can stay, right? The status does. So even if your visa expires, if your status is valid, you can stay. And sort of this question, there's another one too that I think asked the same question about, let's see, I want to go to Mexico, but my visa is expired for a month, but my I-94, my status is valid till 2024. I want to renew the TN visa, but there's I got to go to Mexico to do it. Can I travel, right? So yes, right? There's the automatic visa revalidation rule, which says that if you have an expired visa but valid status, you can travel to Mexico or Canada for less than 30 days, right? Again, in the future, we're hoping that the automatic visa revalidation isn't as necessary because Mexicans can now receive 4-year visas, right? But for all you that still have the 1-year visa and the 3 years of status, right? Obviously, automatic visa revalidation allows you to, not have to renew every single year, right? Not incur that cost in travel and all of that. So yes, you can go to Mexico or Canada for less than 30 days on an expired visa with valid status. It also covers changes of status. So if you entered as a tourist, file the change of status to TN, right? You can actually use automatic visa revalidation, even though you don't have an expired TN visa stamped in your passport. Obviously, this doesn't really apply to Canadians because they don't have a visa stamp at all. They just get for 3 years, and great. Another question, I didn't really see it here, but I want to throw it out, is, especially for our Mexican friends, is a lot of times CBP are just the worst, right? They're the worst. Worst by meaning you have a 1-year visa, but you have an employer support letter that says 3. And when you enter, they always give you 1 year on your status. It's so annoying. Even though you have the employer support letter, clients show it to them. Remember, you can reach out to CBP Deferred Inspection. If you Google it, you can find it. There's a PDF that has all the locations and their contact info, hours of operation, address. Some of them accept emails. These days, most don't. You have to go in person. But look up CBP deferred inspection. So if you have an employer support letter that says 3 years, and when you entered, you were only given 1 year of status, contact CBP deferred inspection to have them amend your I-94 to 3 years. Again, the key is you need to be able to show the employer support letter that requested 3 years. So annoying that we have to do this on so many cases. It's like, you'd think the deferred inspection guys would go to the dudes just down the hall that are actually doing it right there, because it's usually in the airport, and be like, yo, bros, what's going on? Like, you're giving me so much work. Just give people 3 years. We're hoping with the 4-year visa now that we're going to see this as less of a problem, that they're going to be more likely to give people 3 years because they have a 4-year visa. But we're kind of still waiting to see. Another question here. I'm in the long wait for my the appointment to renew my visa. Again, Mexican nationals right now can only renew in 3 places. They can only apply in 3 places, which is Mexico City, Ciudad Juarez, and Guadalajara. Right? You can't apply in Monterrey anymore. Why? I don't know. The Department of State's stupid. Right? It's a major city, the country's largest university, but now you can't apply there. Anyway, Mexico City, Guadalajara, Ciudad Juarez. I think in part because they consolidated, also in part because of just all the backlogs with them being understaffed and all of that. I think from right now, you're looking at appointments in November, right? So it's August, and the earliest appointments are in November, maybe early December, right? So you got to plan accordingly. If your I-94 is expiring, that you can get. Now, in this guy's case, he's asking, hey, look, I'm waiting for this visa appointment, and it appears that his I-94 is going to expire before his appointment. Right? Well, what do I do? Well, first off, if you stay here until your appointment, you've overstayed. If you overstay more than 6 months, you're barred from reentering. If you overstay under 6 months, it's a discretionary decision. Meaning, if the officer sees it, he could deny the renewal. Now, in general, I really haven't seen them go crazy over small overstays. It's like, because it's kind of common for like school. Oh, I overstayed 2 weeks so that my kids could finish out school. In general, I haven't seen them make a big issue of it, but they can if they want to, but it's purely discretionary. I mean, look, in this case, one of 2 things. You can file an extension with USCIS, request an extension of your I-94. The other one is look at how long is your I-94 issued for. If it was only issued for a year, maybe you can go to deferred inspection and get them to amend it and get more time. So again, if you stay, you're going to overstay, which could create issues. You can maybe amend it or file an extension with USCIS and request 3 years. Here we go. Another question. Even though I'm working in the U.S., right, I have a remote job here. I still have a remote job in my home country, right, in Mexico. Is that okay? Again, go look. We recently did a whole video on side gigs and side hustles. The short answer to that question is no. You cannot work for another employer. The law does not define between whether it's a U.S.-based or foreign-based. All that matters is that you are physically in the U.S. and working for somebody. Again, if you are outside the U.S. when you're working for this foreign employer, great. U.S. law doesn't apply when you're not physically here. But no. So again, a lot of these questions have to do with, just the little nuts and bolts of status and renewals and whatnot. Some of them have to do with the nuts and bolts of just, hey, do I qualify for this category? I think I kind of remember what I was going to say. Talking to our Canadian friends here, one of the Mexicans we've already established. There's only 3 places you can apply. If you say, well, what was one better than the other? I don't really think so these days. Like, it doesn't really matter where you apply. Canadians, obviously, there's a whole bunch of ports of entry and airports. And one of the other common questions we tend to see is, where should I apply? Where should I apply? First question, what are you applying as? If you have an accounting degree, applying as an accountant, apply anywhere. Who cares? If you're a mechanical engineer applying for a job as a mechanical engineer, apply anywhere. Doesn't matter. Shouldn't have any issues. If you're applying as a management consultant, one of the categories they hate, or you have one of these nuanced cases where you're like, oh, I have a liberal arts degree, but 3 years of experience, I'm applying as a CSA. There's some places that maybe you should avoid. For example, Pearson is one of those. The airport in Toronto may be one you want to avoid. They're known as being particularly difficult. Um, the land borders are known for being a little bit better. In this case, I would specifically say like the Rainbow Bridge, so that's there like in Niagara Falls, also the one in Buffalo, tend to have better reputations. I think it's the Ambassador Bridge, which is the one in Detroit, has a bad reputation. So that's why you see a lot of cases of people that apply to land border and then immediately turn around and then fly out of Pearson because they don't want to apply at Pearson because it has this bad reputation. Um, and so you'll see that scenario a lot. Again, it boils down to the individual officer. So I mean, you can even go to a port that has a good reputation and still just get that one officer who's not a nice guy or gal and get denied. But in general, it's not a big deal if it's a straightforward case. Apply anywhere. If it's not a straightforward case, then you're usually better off at one of the land borders than the airports, at least like the airport in Toronto and Montreal kind of have bad reputations. But this is one of those ones where you guys got to kind of ask around and see what other people's experiences have been. Also, remember that there are certain ports of entry that do, like the Rainbow Bridge, that want you to schedule an appointment. So just keep that in mind. That doesn't apply to every port of entry, just a handful, but it'll make your life a lot easier and they'll be a lot happier with you if you show up with an appointment rather than just showing up. But these have been our questions about TNs. Like I said, we have a deep dive video where we really walk through all the ins and outs of the TN in both English and Spanish. We have done some videos on those stuff kind of around the edges. We have a video on how to change of how do I do a change of employer, a video on side hustles, right? So obviously look those up. But you'll see that we do pay attention to, when people reach out to us on social media and ask questions, we do try to answer a lot of those questions on social media. Now, if it's obviously something more nuanced or complex, we always ask schedule a consultation so that we can, talk about your specific case more in depth. So like, as always, right, hit us up, go to our website, right? From our website, you can click, schedule an appointment with us, download our app, Lawpilot Guardian. It's on Android and iOS, lots of useful tools and information there. And we're always adding new features. But hey, thank you for tuning into this video. Feel free to ask us more questions and we'll try to get to them all. Thank you. And we'll see you later.